follow those people that have a lot of wisdom in their life who can cause you to grow. And one, don't spend too much time on social media, but when you do, make it all about growth.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance longevity expert. And on today's podcast, I give you a very special treat. I'm actually going to share an excerpt of something I've been working on for the past year. It has been a passion project, a project of love called the Thrive State Summit. It's going to be an online and virtual event where I host 50 of the world's thought leaders and experts in the field of mental health, of how to actually get the tools to beat chronic stress and burnout. Really, it's going to be a resource that's going to be so valuable for you. You can register for free at thrivestatesummit.com. Now, if you are new to the podcast, I want to welcome you in. This podcast is really about elevating our life. And so I get the opportunity to bring in many of my friends who are thought leaders and world experts in the fields of mental health, resilience, longevity, relationships, business, where we come up with the tools and tactics for you to take your life to the next level. And for those who this podcast has already helped, if you are returning, thank you so much for allowing this podcast to grow. It is through your engagement, through you guys subscribing that really helps us. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. Please share this podcast with your friends and family members. And whenever you get a chance, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, consider picking up a copy of my book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. It's really the pillars, the blueprint that you need to actually control your energetic state, because it is our energetic state, the frequency by which we live life through, actually becomes a signal to our DNA that actually controls our physiology, that gives us access to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. Now, as I said before, this is an excerpt from the Thrive State Summit. It is certainly a passion project. I spent the past year interviewing 50 of the world's top leaders in mental health, emotional wellness, to really give you the tools. And on today's podcast, we'll just give you a small sample of one interview. And so if you want to listen to the entire interview, along with the entire interviews of 50 of the world expert in mental health, chronic stress, and burnout, please register now at thrivestatesummit.com. You'll particularly want to listen and register for the summit if you are feeling the weight of chronic stress or burnout, or maybe you're grappling with persistent symptoms of anxiety or depression, or maybe even physical symptoms of fatigue, brain fog, weight gain. They're all energetically connected. If we're not looking out for our mental health, our social health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, and physical health go out the window as well. So the Thrive State Summit is something that's so near and dear to my heart. I did it because I've had so many friends in the past couple of years really suffer from the consequences of not looking after our mental health, all the way down to suicide. And so I wanted to make sure that the world has resources when dealing with mental health issues, because not only can we avoid physical, emotional, mental symptoms, but we could also end up being the very best versions of ourselves. Because trust me, the ones that love you, your family, your businesses, everyone around you, is just that much better when you can bring the full you to them. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, which is the excerpt, and please register at thrivestatesummit.com. It is completely free. You're going to get so much value from it, but please enjoy this little excerpt from the Thrive State Summit. I hope to see you in the summit itself. Please enjoy this episode of the Thrive State Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to another session of the Thrive State Summit. Today we have renowned guest Dr. Josh Axe, who is a wellness physician, popular radio show host, and a sought-after national speaker committed to setting people free from their health problems so that they can live their lives to their fullest potential. He's on a mission to change health around the world and lead the new health revolution. He's actually earned his doctorate from Palmer College and currently finishing his Master of Science in Organizational Leadership from Johns Hopkins University. He's the co-founder of CVO of Ancient Nutrition and founder of drax.com. He is the best-selling author of Eat Dirt Keto Diet and Ancient Remedies. Dr. Axe is the founder of the Health Institute and Leaders Media, a platform that provides the latest on breaking news, leadership, business, and wealth. Dr. Axe, welcome to the Thrive State Summit.
Hey, Kien, thanks so much for having me.
It's so great to see somebody that's brought in so many ancient traditions back into health. You know, for me, sometimes I think about why people get disease, and it almost seems like, you know, human beings aren't living the life that they are meant to live, which is why some people that, you know, sometimes question ancient therapies. Well, I mean, it's the way people have been treating people from the very beginning of time. Can you talk a little bit about sort of these ancient remedies and why they still hold so much truth today?
Yeah, well, they're ancient and they're also modern. And so all that being said, I think the big thing is a lot of us have gotten out of our natural patterns. I'll give you an example of this, circadian rhythms. You know, when you study neuroscience, as I have, you'll start to understand that, and most of it is just common sense, we know this, but our bodies, when we should sleep, when we should rise, it's very in tune with the sun, it's very in tune with nature. When we start to have too much light, you know, one of the things we've seen over the years is that it starts to mess with our hormones, specifically melatonin, and even your hormones like ghrelin, which affect hunger and a number of things. So I was actually recently doing some research and presenting this on a podcast I have, and I went through and they actually found that if you have any blue light after really 7 p.m., it's going to affect your sleep. Yeah. And it's going to affect your sleep significantly. So you could wear everything from blue blocker sunglasses to, you know, just not be on your phone or mobile device at night or be watching TV. All that being said, we know that anything that's not in tune with nature is going to affect our body negatively. And so again, it's an ancient practice to, when the sun went down, we went to sleep. When the sun came up, we wake up. That's just one simple example. But, you know, there's a lot of examples of sort of these ancient ways of healing, and one would be diet, right? I remember when I first opened my functional medicine practice many years ago, which I no longer run, but when I did, I would get some flack from conventional medical doctors because they would say, well, diet doesn't have anything to do with health. Yeah. I mean, literally they said it. Now, here's the other crazy part. You know, we went through like the COVID pandemic and the doctors were kind of saying that again. Well, you know, for your immune system, you really can't do anything diet. You have to do something, you know, a chemical, something synthetic. It's the only way. Well, of course, now we're 3 years later, and we start seeing all the research coming out. Well, it was comorbidities. In fact, listen to this stat. This is mind-blowing. It's a little off topic, but I think it's important. 94% of people that passed from COVID had a pre-existing serious condition. Yeah. Most of the time, it was obesity, heart disease, diabetes, or immunodeficiency. And so, for instance, diabetes and obesity, of course, if you improve your diet, that helps with that. It's going to help with any sort of viral infection. And so all that being said, sometimes we get almost too caught up in the modern day research or what the science says or the person that says, I am the science. And the truth is that, by the way, there was another study that found this. The more money that is put into the study from a pharmaceutical company, the less reliable that study is.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, it's common sense. But all that being said, sometimes we even need to be careful if somebody's quoting a study, because sometimes these studies, the way they're funded through the pharmaceutical companies, they're not really accurate. They're not really true. So I would say eating good food, being outside, getting sunlight, even doing things like fasting have tremendous benefits. And I've actually helped over many years, as a lot of doctors have who are in this functional medicine space and natural medicine space. You know, there are millions of people that have healed using these ancient that we'll about today, everything from Hashimoto's thyroiditis to, you know, to arthritis, to Lyme disease. And so I'm happy to touch on any of that. But yeah, these ancient practices they shouldn't be ancient. They should just be, you know, things that we always are doing to keep ourselves healthy.
That's a great point. You know, I am a longevity and performance physician, and there's a lot of cool science that's out there these days in terms of how we track our blood glucose levels, full body MRIs, stem cells, peptides, all these things that I put in the category of the science of longevity. However, if we actually started to study the happiest people on the planet, the people that live the most on the planet, the people in these blue zones, they don't have access to any of these technologies. So what is it telling us? It's telling us that how we live our life is actually medicine, and that we potentially deviated from how we should be as human beings, how we should be, in communities and living and eating a certain way and moving every single day. Those are the type of things that actually turn on the biology of longevity and performance. And so to the naysayers of ancient remedies is thinking it's very old. No, those are the ways that human beings have lived life before. And now we're just trying to catch up with how we deviated from how human beings are living. Yes?
Well, and food as medicine is something I've been teaching for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's critically important and part of what we should be focused on. But to your point, lifestyle medicine is also critically important. We see stress and sleep and a number of other things that greatly impact mental health and overall longevity. And the other thing is mindset medicine. This is something I recently came through a health crisis, and I really believe that using my mindset to help myself heal was the most important factor, is just as important as food. And by the way, I was taking peptides like BPC 157 and TB 500. I was doing hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I was doing, vitamin IVs. And I really think that the way that having a healing mindset is the most important part of healing, and of course with mental health as well.
Let's dive into that a little bit. I do want to get into specific ancient remedies, particularly as it pertains to essential oils and CBD later. But let's talk a little bit about this health situation that you had, and what were the tools that you used? You mentioned mindset medicine. What exactly did you employ in terms of a mindset shift that helped you heal?
First, I'll share the situation and kind of give the example of how I healed through it. So I went in for actually a stem cell injection. My own cells went in, and somehow during the process, my disc got infected. And I ended up getting osteomyelitis in my disc. I couldn't walk, didn't know what it was at first. Finally, after not being able to walk, an ambulance picked me up, went and got, and by the way, at the time I was in great health. I had just got stem cell. I had a little bit of an aching nag from weightlifting in my back. And I thought, well, this is going to help. And I'd done it before and it had helped. And so I was doing it again. Well, again, with this infection, I got an MRI and it was all blown up. You could see the infection of the disc. And so I went and started getting treatment. I did some conventional treatment, a much shorter time than normal, 4 weeks rather than 12 weeks. And at the same time, I was doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, red light therapy, as I mentioned, peptides, numerous things, spending time outside, every vitamin and supplement, essential oil you could think of. Yeah. And finally, over time, I began to heal. But for the first 6 months, I didn't notice any improvement. Now, so there was 2 months of doing treatment. And at first, I wasn't noticing as much of an improvement. And I actually felt emotions that to a degree I'd never felt before, depression, anxiety, and even despair. And I had this moment where I was like, will I ever get better? And when I met with the infectious disease doctor, he told me, he said, you may be permanently disabled. And this was hard for me because I've been teaching people how to be healthy for 20 years. I had all the tools in my tool belt and still hearing that. But I had to take what he told me and say, you know what? That's not going to be my reality.
Yeah.
I'm going to have hope and grit and gratitude through this process. I know that God is for me, not against me. And so I really decided and picture what my ideal future looked like. And, I had a 2-year-old at the time. She's 3 now. But I was, just months before throwing her up in the air in the pool, running around with her constantly. And I wasn't able to do that. And so being in that mindset of, for a few moments, will I heal? Will I ever be back to my normal self? And throwing my daughter up in the air and not being able to hold her. I mean, it was so heartbreaking. But a question I asked myself, Kien, and this was so important, I think, for everybody, is that I asked, is the mindset I currently have serving me? Yeah. To let my mind go down the path of, I may never walk again. What would it be like to be permanently disabled and crippled from this injury? And a number of things. And I said, you know what? That doesn't help me. I don't want to focus on the 50% of the people that maybe could end up where I could go based on the doctor's statistics. Instead, I'm going to focus my mindset on the 1% of people, the top 1% of healers who have been in my situation, those people that we see, Kien, those professional athletes who were told by a doctor that they would be paralyzed, never walk again, but then they do and they beat the odds. What did they think? What did they do? And so I started watching videos about those people and thinking about the same and visualizing myself healing and throwing my daughter in the air and doing all those things. And it was just 4 months ago I started walking again because I didn't walk for almost a full 12 months.
Wow.
So all that being said, I'm back to working out now. I'm not 100%, but I'm going to get there. I'm actually not that far from there right now. I think I'll be there here probably 6 months from now. All that being said, we've got to have that mindset, and you've got to have those beliefs of knowing what is the best possible outcome. I call it mindset medicine, and it's really fostering hope and faith and a sense of gratitude. It's very easy for people to get in a victim mindset.
Yes.
And the victim mentality is destructive to your results. I want to give you an example of this, and Kien, you know this as well as anybody being a physician. You and I have studied the placebo effect and the nocebo effect as we've read the scientific literature. There is an example of this is a single case study, but of the nocebo effect where this man was told that he had liver cancer and he had 3 months to live. They went and he died 3 months later. They went and did a biopsy and they found that he didn't have liver cancer. He had a small benign tumor that they could have simply removed from his liver, and that was it. He should have gone on to live another 30 years. And that's the power of the nocebo effect. If you believe you're going to have a bad outcome, you likely will. If you believe the placebo effect, and some placebo effects show it could be anywhere from a 30% improvement to more in what your outcome could be, in some cases much higher than that, then you likely will. And so it's important to know that, our process of visualization is closely tied to our neurological system. In fact, when you see a fetus developing, the eye and the brain are essentially one tissue when you start to see that development. And so if you're visualizing yourself crippled and sick or suffering with a condition or mental health issue or whatever it is in the future, your body will neurologically start moving you towards that. I see a lot of people with smartphone addictions. They don't even realize all of a sudden they're in a conversation with somebody and they're on it, right? Or they're like, gosh, how did I even get on this? Because your body, around 90% of what we do and our habits are unconscious.
Yeah.
Your body is naturally doing something and moving in a direction. So if you have a bad vision for your future, you will likely get there because your brain subconsciously will start moving towards that. Versus if you have a picture for your future of abundance, where you are the healthiest you've ever been, your body will start, your mind, your physiology will start moving towards that reality. And I saw the same thing. In fact, I helped my mom heal from cancer. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer, and we had her start visualizing herself. This is when she was around 50 years old. We had her start visualizing herself. I said, Mom, what does your ideal future look like? And she said, bringing my grandkids to Disney World. Now, she didn't have grandkids at the time, but now my mom's 71 years old, and she's bringing her grandkids to Disney World constantly. In fact, she's bringing them for like 10 hours, which I don't even think I could do. So all that being said, I've seen it in people overcoming cancer. I've seen it myself overcoming infection. I've seen it with people with every disease you can think of. But it's just so important we foster that mindset. I know I'm talking a lot here, but one more thing I think is so important.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast thus far. Now, I wanted to give you a really neat resource that I've been working on for the past year. Are you living with chronic stress, burnout, or the nagging symptoms of anxiety and depression? Do you find yourself battling fatigue or brain fog or feeling like you're not performing at your best? Well, what I've been working on all of this year is made especially for you. It is an online virtual event called the Thrive State Summit. You can register now for free at thrivestatesummit.com. But what it is this. You get to connect with and learn from 50 world-renowned thought leaders, experts, and some of your favorite celebrities. We've got people like Bruce Lipton, Vishen Lakhiani, Dave Asprey, Dr. Josh Axe, all united with a shared mission to tackle the mental health crisis that is impacting each and every one of us. Now, the Thrive State Summit isn't just another event. It is really my hope that it becomes a catalyst for change, particularly in this fast-paced world. And so what can you expect? You could expect to take home life-changing takeaways from all our experts, activation sessions to be able to bring you into states of calm and relaxation, really all the resources for you to become the best version of yourself. And finally, proceeds from the Thrive State Summit will go to 4 mental health nonprofits improving Rare Impact Fund, the Trevor Project, Good Days, Genius Recoveries. So please, if you invest in yourself, and please share this resource with your friends and family members. It's something I poured my entire heart into this past year, and I know it's going to help so many people. So register now at thrivestatesummit.com.
I saw another study on the placebo effect. And they said you can amplify the power of the placebo effect with 3 ways. Number one, you want to picture your ideal future. Okay, so you need to have a very clear vision of what do you want your health or whatever it is to look like in the future. Okay, so picture it as much as you can, very clearly as much as you can. Number two, the more you can attach a positive emotion to it,
Yes.
like joy or happiness or like whatever it is, some sort of hope and joy and love regarding that situation. Like think about the emotions you're experiencing. Like for myself, I pictured me throwing my daughter in the air, the sense of joy and happiness from that.
Yeah.
And then the study also found as the third thing, then if you start moving towards that and doing everything you can from an action standpoint to make that a reality, if you do that, you greatly amplify the placebo effect in making that vision that you want. Going from visualization to realization is the process.
Oh, so good there, Dr. X. Just bringing back like what people in the blue zones did, because it wasn't necessarily what they were doing, but it was how they were being. Knowing that they lived life with a purpose, that they needed to serve something bigger than themselves, living in that state of gratitude, knowing that, life is just so precious. And it's what they were being transferred that energy of how they were being and feeling to what they were doing, then led them to have a long life. You mentioned a couple of things, and I'd love to add on just how important.
Yeah, I love that.
Because physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, are all energetically connected. And if you find that your feelings are off, your thoughts are going to be off, and your physicality will be as well. And you mentioned this thing on mindset, which I'd love to expand on a little bit. It's you think and you feel what you focus on, and it's deeply tied to your nervous system. And so there's a couple of things you could do and shift in terms of how you think of things. We can't control the 80 to 90,000 thoughts that we have. A big percentage of them being recurrent thoughts, and a lot of them being negative, because that's just kind of how our brain is wired. But what can we do? We could shift our focus where we put the flashlight on the thoughts. Oh, I don't want to focus on that thought. Change it, because that'll shift the way you feel. We could also change our perspective and our meaning to things that happen in our life, because like you said, if we give ourselves a victim story, we will drive the process of stress that's going on in our body, which raises inflammation, drops our immune system down, putting us prone to chronic symptoms and disease. And so, yes, we can change the story we tell ourselves, because oftentimes I know that it's our biography that dictates our biology as well.
That's good.
Because if we start to feel differently about ourselves, we're giving different messages to every single cell in our body. The energetics that we give to every single cell in our body, this is what epigenetics is, that our DNA is not fixed in terms of how it programs, but it listens to the external cues outside in its environment. And by changing those things, our focus, our perspective, our meaning, and our stories with how we think, we could actually shift our genetic expression as well. So thank you for sharing that. And now I'm just going to close my thought, because it was such a powerful thing with what you said around mindset. So let me ask you this. When you were going through that time, you were feeling depressed, anxious, despair. I know for many people, it's hard from that place to start to think of a new thought. It's hard from that energetic to go, how do I even have a good future, because I'm so down? During that point in time, what were the things you drew upon? And for me, I sensed there was a deep sense of faith that probably allowed you to realize a better vision for yourself. What were those things, particularly during the times of deep despair, that you used to leverage to change your mindset?
Yeah, I would say stories, songs, and scriptures is sort of what I used. And to give you an example here, stories. our brains are wired for story. There's something about that we kind of really understand and grab a hold of. And so for me, watching stories, whether it be movies or YouTube clips or reading books about people that overcame the odds. A good example of this would be someone like David Goggins, right? I mean, he's got such an incredible mindset. His book, Can't Hurt Me. So reading that book about how he overcame in the way he thought. I got a good friend of mine, Rebecca Lyons, who's wrote a great book about the resilient life. And so reading her book and doing that. So reading stories about people who overcame the odds and who healed from the condition. So one way was through stories. Another way, as I mentioned before, was through song. I made sure I was listening to a lot of uplifting songs for me, my faith, a lot of Christian music, just things to where that's where I was. And living the state of gratitude and praise was really important. And then scriptures, or some people call it, or you could also use the word even a slogan or kind of a quote. But I would meditate on, things like, God is for me, not against me. He's got a great plan and future for my life. And so again, for me, my faith was really a big part of that.
Yeah.
And meditating on saying Bible verses over and over and over again and memorizing those. And I would do those every single night before I went to bed, first thing when I woke up. But I think that's an important part. It's part of what you choose to expose yourself to. I'll give you another example of this just in life. I think I read a study recently, and I'm sure you've seen the same one because it was in the news as well, but female adolescents are having the most negative side effects of social media use, specifically Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
And with that, the levels of depression and suicidal thoughts are up tremendously. I think the reason is these young women are looking at their phones, and basically all the people they are following are other women who are taking 100 different photos of themselves and photoshopping it, and then everybody's life looks perfect. And they look at that and they think, oh, maybe they don't feel as beautiful or as worthy or as special for some reason, because that's who is, they're being fed by somebody in that way. And the other thing is those people are spending that amount of time doing those pictures because they have low self-worth and self-value. Yeah. And so it's this idea of, it's in a way, it's Dunbar's principle or Dunbar's law of, you have 150 people that influence you, but the 5 people you spend the most time with is who you become. And so I think as well, I went through and deleted anyone on my social media who wasn't iron sharpens iron, who didn't cause me to grow, who didn't help me foster a healthy mindset. Not to say I don't follow people that think differently than me, but if it somehow brings my self-worth or my purpose down and my own identity more than anything, then I'm not going to follow those people. So I went through and started following people who I felt like, okay, these people are really iron sharpens iron. And again, I mentioned, David Goggins or Joko Willink, or I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan. And, those sort of people that caused me to grow and develop a growth mindset. And so I think that's a big mistake people are making today. I would encourage people, go through and delete those accounts that are supporting, not supporting your opinions. Yeah. Because sometimes I follow people that I differ than, but people that are virtuous, high character, people that will cause you to grow. In fact, on my podcast tomorrow, and I actually agree with most of his stuff, I'm going to be interviewing Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Wow.
And he's got some great stuff he's doing, with healthcare. In fact, I'm a huge fan of his mindset around most of what he's doing in healthcare. But there's a couple things I may not agree with him on, but I follow him because there's a lot of things that he's doing with research-wise that I've been very, very impressed with. So my point there is follow those people that have a lot of wisdom in their life, who can cause you to grow. And one, don't spend too much time on social media, but when you do, make it all about growth.
Yeah, that is so good. We know Jim Rohn had the famous quote, "You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with." As right, that goes the same with health, with success, with relationships, because we're energetic beings, and the vibration of the things that we surround ourselves with, we all come up to the same type of vibration. That vibration is energy that we give to ourselves. And so when we're choosing things, and you mentioned just being very, very conscious, is the people I'm around, are the activities I'm doing, the things I'm following, is it raising my energy up, making me feel good, or is it pulling me down in a certain way? And I think that was really good to be able to say, be more conscious about the media that you're consuming and how it makes you feel.
Well, it's like food, right? You are what you eat. You are what you consume in a way. No, yeah.
Well, this was great points that we've talked about thus far. I'm so glad you shared your story. And I want to just commend you and acknowledge you for, I know a lot of health influencers or people that are in the health space that don't get very vulnerable when it comes to their own health challenges. That they feel like because they're seen in a certain light, that if they have a health challenge, they should not share that with other people. And the fact that you just shared your story and how you overcame it just is a testament to the authentic person you truly are. And it also goes to show like just how human we are and that everybody needs to have some tools in their tool belt.
Yeah, I think there's a process. I had somebody, I was doing a podcast yesterday and I had the question of somebody asking me my mindset through this process. And, I think it's so important that, again, we asked this question that I had mentioned earlier. And that is, so here's essentially what they asked me is, what was your mindset through this when other people asked you? Because people are always asking me once they heard what's happened, how are you? And I think it's important to have a combination of vulnerability and positivity. So for me, I'm not going to lie. If somebody said, like when I was getting picked up by the ambulance, Josh, how are you doing? I'm in a really challenging season right now. In fact, I have never been so challenged mentally with depression, anxiety, and despair. But you know what? I have a God that's bigger than this, and I know I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to come out refined. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's really important that that's the mindset people have, is I don't want to be dumping on people, but I actually went through this process and I tried to be refined by it. And I also tried to think about how can I serve and love other people through this process? Because we know, and this is part of this reason why, Kien, I applaud you for putting on this summit. There are so many people suffering with health issues. There are so many people having mental health issues and wanting to improve their mindset. And so when I went through this process, I really had to also think about, like, my daughter's watching me right now and how I face adversity. And so I want to show her how to face adversity like a warrior, not like a victim. And so I think it's important as well to know that the way that you go through hardship in life, everybody sees that, and you can either demotivate them or you can inspire them.
Yeah. My clinical life, prior to longevity and performance medicine, I was an interventional radiologist. And as a radiologist, what you can do is you look through images and you see certain things, like, for example, you see a tumor, and you go back maybe a couple of years before on the same patient, and you're looking at it like, oh my God, there was that small little thing back there that was something. And we call that perspective the retrospectoscope. You didn't see it initially, but there was it at the end. And I draw this as something that you just mentioned in terms of life happening for us, not to us. Because if we could really look at our past and said that every single challenge, every single obstacle that we had has always been met with a season of growth, a season of building more resilience, a season of becoming a better version of us at the end of it. And so if we could look at that, and maybe even look at the people that have hurt us in the past, who we have become after that, I start to be able to see that, were they there to really hurt us, or were they there to serve us, to become a bigger, better version of us?
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for thrivestatestarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You can find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast. Being able to see that things are working for us, because if we could look back in time, all those challenges made us into a better version of ourselves. And it's what you were doing during your crisis right there, was just use your own retrospectoscope, put yourself 50 years from now, like, how is this serving me right now? And I do that with me all the time, because if I could take that 50, 100-year-old version of myself and like ask myself, with that wisdom of that person, how is this happening for me? And it completely changes the way I feel in the moment. And how you feel in the moment actually has profound effects on your biology. So thank you for sharing that. Now,
it does. And I learned so much about mindset and grew spiritually from this and mentally. The other thing is I learned a lot about health, and I learned this with my mom. When my mom had cancer, I learned so much about holistic cancer treatments, and she was able to overcome it naturally. It was amazing. When I went through this process, I had used a lot of food as medicine, and I was up somewhat on the research, but because I was so sick, I spent thousands of hours. That's not over exaggeration. For a year, thousands of hours studying and learning about how do I heal myself from this major issue. And so I learned a tremendous amount about the ideal foods to heal, mindset, and from, different types of infections. I learned so much about all of these holistic treatments and about a number of things. So I'd love to get into that today as well. And we could talk a little bit about this sort of, body-mind and mind-body connection here.
Let's do that. I do want to say
remedies.
I do so want to save a space for essential oils and CBD, but let's dive into that because we are here now. And you just showed a perfect example of how pain usually leads to purpose. And what you have gone through, that pain or challenge that you've gone through, you have built this reservoir of knowledge and wisdom now that you can share with other people. And it's just made you that much more knowledgeable and be able to help that much more people who have probably gone through similar type of problems. But let's talk a little bit about that mind-body connection that you've discovered during your healing process.
Well, so basically, and give one study here as an example, there was a study just came out about 2 weeks ago on the gut microbiome and being connected to our mental health, right? And then listen, there are loads of studies on this, but it is so important that we take care of our gut. And so for that, my diet consisted of lots of bone broth. We know our gut is made up of, at least the lining is made up primarily of collagen. And so we really need to feed that. So bone broth is it's 90% collagen by weight. And then in addition to that, it was mostly cooked vegetables and meat. So really meat and vegetables were almost the majority of my entire diet. I did a few berries as well. And then loads and loads of herbs. I did herbs to help fight infection. I did a lot of astragalus, which is a great herb for the immune system. I did a lot of reishi mushroom. And then I did things like garlic and a number of other herbs. And then I did a lot of reducing inflammation, turmeric primarily, also a lot of galangal and ginger. And then I did a lot of omega-3 fats. And that's a big part of what I focused on as I went through this. And I did have to for a short period of time. And I had not taken a medication since high school. So I've been very clean, never taken anything my whole life. And I did for a short period of time to fight this infection that had built up so seriously in my bones. And and I had to rebuild my gut microbiome. So I was doing at least probably about 500 billion, units daily of a probiotic supplement, which is typically about 10 times the daily dose that most people get. And I can tell you, I mean, it was really big for my gut. Most people underdose probiotics. If they have a gut issue, I think people want to go much heavier and combine food-based probiotics like sauerkraut and coconut yogurt and a number of things there to help build it back up, but also doing 3 times a day higher dose probiotics if they have any sort of mental health issue or trying to heal their gut at all, I think is critically important as well. So I think that from a dietary standpoint, that was something that was basically what I did.
So good. And this really leads into the question of, kind of ancient remedies for mental health.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of good things on there already. The adaptogenic mushrooms, the turmeric. Let's dive into essential oils and CBD. How does these, ingredients offer a bridge between traditional practices and our modern day understanding of mental health? Could we talk about maybe how they work from a biological standpoint?
Sure. Yeah, so let's start with essential oils here, and then we can jump into CBD. So, essential oils have been used for a very long period of time. Now, I want to mention, I'll reference that they've been used for thousands of years. They're referenced in the Bible. They're referenced in Egyptian medicine. So they've been around a long time. However, we don't know for certain if they were distilled. Now, people have actually found machinery by the Egyptians that is very old, the distillery. So it is possible that the oils were distilled and concentrated, but likely they were less concentrated than some of the oils we have today. All that still, people have been using essential oils in some form for thousands of years, and they're called volatile oils because they're volatile compounds, and volatile compounds are very small. So they're a source type of fat that are about 1,000 times smaller than the culinary oil we might use, like a coconut oil or an olive oil. So it's much smaller and much lighter in weight, and so it's diffused in the air. So if you walk into a room and you smell peppermint oil, that's that fat. It's that oil that is just, it's so light and so small that it's just naturally floating through the air and can pass through things very easily. And so we know, and this really ties into, Kien, something we were talking about earlier, and that is how our senses can affect our physiology. And so we talked earlier about our eyes, right? Visualization, that process of that placebo effect working in your favor. We're a very similar thing. Our olfactory system, our sense of smell is deeply tied into, and this is interesting as well, it's deeply tied into our memories.
Yes.
And when you look at mental health and you look at the research, I've studied a lot of psychology over the years and studied this at Johns Hopkins some as well in some of the courses I've taken. And when you look at when somebody has a traumatic event in their life, oftentimes that's replayed through a memory over and over and over again. Sometimes it's even replayed in a way subconsciously, or you kind of hold on to that because we've never worked through that process.
Yes.
And so memory, it tends to be memories that still affect our mental health later on because the event's gone. The event happened. It's the memory that sort of replays and can create this sort of toxic or positive, either way, neurological cycle. I'll give you an example of this. When I was in high school, I was a terrible student. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I could not pay attention to school. Barely graduated high school. I had like a 2.3 GPA. Couldn't get into the college I wanted, but I was able to go to summer school, finally get in, and then I started doing a little bit better. But here's what happened. I had a teacher tell me in high school, she said, Josh, would you stay after class? This is freshman year high school, English class. And I said, yeah, Mrs. Noble. And she said, you've got an F on this paper. She said, you have a D- in the class, and I don't even know if you're going to pass. She said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to be a doctor. Because my mom had just gone through cancer, and I'd seen it, and I thought, my heart was breaking. I really wanted to help people, right? And she said, you'll never get into medical school. You'll never be a doctor. She said, my daughter has a 3.8 GPA, and she's going to be a doctor of physical therapy and barely got into school. And I thought, and I walked out of there thinking, and then a few weeks later, I got the ADHD diagnosis. And so I thought, gosh, not only am I not smart, I'm medically not smart. And so I went through high school. I didn't even try, I just did terrible. And then finally, to get into school, I took a freshman English 101, and I had a teacher, and I said, you know what? I want to go to college. It's like, I don't want to be the kid to stay back and and so I tried for the first time. And at the end of the class, my teacher said, Josh, would you stay after? I thought, oh gosh, I don't know what she wants me to stay after for. And she said, hey, you got the highest grade in the class on this paper. She said, have you thought about being an English major? I can tell you, you're a really talented writer. And I said, no, but thank you. And but afterwards, here's why I bring that up. I had like this memory transplant. From then on, I did great in school. In fact, I got a 3.1 that year. Later on, Johns Hopkins, I graduated a 3.9 GPA. And so I did well in school. But I had this limiting belief system and this really poor mindset issue around myself because of this memory. And it was like, I had one teacher tell me one thing and I had another tell me another. And I was like, this memory transplant. It's like, hey, you got a toxic liver or heart, and we're going to do an organ transplant. We're going to get something healthy and new in there that can function better. Most people need to do the same thing. People need to do this with their belief systems. You need to go through and say, what is my limiting belief? You identify it, replace it with a new, better belief. Sorry, I got so off track there with essential oils. Jumping back to this, essential oils have been shown to help improve your memory. They've shown to improve mood. There was a study at Vanderbilt University on citrus oils and some oils like lavender, and it was shown to greatly reduce anxiety related to surgery and improve patient mental health. And so we know that, again, essential oils have an effect even on that placebo, believing you're going to have a better outcome, but specifically improving mood. So essential oils have been shown to help lift depression. They've been shown to help reduce anxiety, lavender, especially what I'm talking about here. And it's also been shown to help lessen insomnia. And so some of the best essential oils for mental health, again, lavender would be number one. Chamomile, specifically Roman chamomile, also has tremendous benefits. One of my favorites. You'll notice most of the floral oils are very uplifting in mood and calming at the same time.
Yeah.
And then there are certain oils that help with overall focus and mentality, and that would be vetiver. Cedarwood is also very good, even peppermint from a neurological standpoint. So those are probably some, and then citrus oils as well, like a wild orange or a lemon. Those are probably some of the best essential oils for mental health.
Oh, amazing. Let's dive into CBD now. What's the scientific basis? There's so much conflicting type of experts, spouting the pros and the cons, and no, this is hogwash. What's the truth behind CBD?
Well, the truth behind CBD is that it's a great herbal remedy on par with a turmeric or a ginger or an astragalus. It's not a cure, but it is a really great and powerful natural remedy. In fact, I would say when it comes to reducing cortisol levels and helping lower, stress hormones, it's one of the best, if not the best. And so that's why I really like it when it comes to mental health. But if somebody has a lot of anxiety, if you've got a really low day and you're just sort of wired up, CBD really helps calm and tonify the nervous system. And so a CBD basically stands for, the C is for cannabinoids, and specifically cannabidiol. But cannabinoids are known for being nervous system tonic. And when I say it helps calm the nervous system, so it helps calm, if you ever heard it helps calm your nerves, that's essentially what it does, probably better than anything. And that's really a big deal though, calming your nervous system, because when your nervous system is wired up, your body releases more cortisol, it releases less melatonin, so you don't sleep as well at night, which is attached to all kinds of health issues. And so it really is something I think that has a lot of benefits. Now, it also probably helps the digestive system. And also your cannabinoid receptor sites are, of course, there's some in your brain, but there's a lot in your gut. There's a lot attached to numerous hormonal systems, even related to pregnancy, a number of, almost every organ system. You can go on and look at sort of the online. There's some good things on CBD receptor sites and where those are located in the body, but they're all over the place. And so they really help calm any organ that's overactive. And so I would say if you're a person who tends to get riled up in any sort of stress or anxiety, especially.
Yeah.
I like it the best for anxiety. It's probably the most powerful as well for insomnia. If you have trouble sleeping at night, taking it after dinner or when you're in a moment of stress, it's going to help that as well. But gut issues, insomnia, poor sleep at night, that's when CBD is going to shine. Now, in the clinical literature, also does show some anti-inflammatory properties. So if you're having chronic pain, I like pairing it with an omega-3 supplement and maybe something like a boswellia or a turmeric. Those are great combos as well for reducing chronic pain. We could get a whole conversation about there are some times if you go to certain states, you can get medical CBD to THC like ratios, which I think can be therapeutic. However, I do want to mention where CBD would have very little or almost no side effects, THC does. It really decreases motivation. It decreases actually testosterone in men. It can be very, very negative if somebody is a chronic user of a THC-like product, like smoking marijuana is a great example of that. It can really have negative effects on the body. A little bit here and there if somebody's in a crisis, I think mixed with CBD can have some benefits, but I really caution people in the use of it because of what it does to the adrenal gland specifically and certain other organ systems of the body. But again, I think a CBD oil, about 40 milligrams a day as a dosage is pretty great for a lot of people. In fact, we give it to our pets when we fly to kind of help keep them calm. So it's got a lot of great uses.
Well, this has been amazing. I know you got to go soon, but is there any other natural remedies you could think of in the sphere of mental health in addition to the CBD and essential oils you just mentioned that we should be aware of? I hope you enjoy that excerpt from the Thrive State Summit on this week's episode of the Thrive State Podcast. If you want to listen to the full interview along with the full interviews of the 50 thought leaders, experts, and celebrities in the mental health, emotional wellness world, please register for free at thrivestatesummit.com. Again, if you find this podcast useful, please subscribe, please share this episode with your friends and family members, and do us a favor by leaving us 5-star wherever podcasts are heard. It will help the show grow. And finally, if you haven't already, get the free resources. I have a bundle of longevity as well as peak performance resources to give you, which includes ebooks, lecture notes, breathwork exercises. You can get them all at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you again. Thanks for being a part of our community and our mission to really elevate human potential. And remember always, you are your best medicine.